Hi, my name is James. I am the creator of the website Morning Mercy, and you are listening to what is really the very first episode where I get into a topic. And the Morning Mercy podcast is hopefully going to be not very based in theology or breaking down or deconstructing the aspects of my former faith. That there's a lot of content out there. If you are a former follower of the teachings of William Branham, there's a great amount of research out there. It's actually overwhelming how much information there is, and so if those are your questions and that's what you're looking to find, I'm probably not going to get into it in a very satisfying way. I'm sure I'll touch on things here and there, but really, the purpose and intention of my podcast is to deal with the human aspect. It's the understanding that when you leave fundamentalist religion, a very strict kind of extreme version of Christianity or whatever type of group that you belong to, I recognize that there could be people listening to my podcast that aren't from my exact form of Christian, pseudo-Christian teaching. Maybe you've never heard of William Branham, but you probably are going to listen to what I'm saying and it'll resonate. There's a very common denominator between all factions, groups, belief systems, where there is a strong element of control from the leadership. It's an us and them kind of mentality, and if you're not going to be towing the line with the us, then you're one of them. And all of them out there tend to be the bad people, the evil people, the people that we're supposed to be running away from. And that's just the way these types of systems all operate. So when I start talking about my experience, maybe you'll find it interesting yourself, because you might have your own version through your own church and whatever experiences you had. So we're going to find out. The issue I really want to get into today then, in understanding how difficult it is to go through those early stages of walking away from what it is that you may have believed for your entire life. Maybe your encounter was a lot shorter, but regardless, it's hard to leave because the intense pressure to get you to stay in the first place usually involved a lot of pressure tactics, a lot of manipulation of the way that you thought and viewed the world around you. You probably were given a viewpoint that to be accepted, to be a good person, to be right before God and before each other, and to be acceptable to one another, then we had to follow and dance to the same song and do all the right things and follow the right process. And so once that settles in and you're dancing to that song, it's very, very hard to be the one to break rhythm. There's all kinds of studies that show that, if you go into an elevator and everybody in the elevator is facing the back wall, even though the door is over here behind you, but if everyone's facing the back wall, it's a very hard thing to break from the crowd. It's built into our human nature, to belong, to not stand out. So, leaving a church, it's the decision to face the opposite direction as everybody else in the room. It's the willingness to put up your hand when everyone else is saying amen and yes sir and in full agreement, and you're the one who puts up and says, hey, I have a question about that. Like, that's dangerous ground. That's scary ground. That's the kind of thing that no one really wants to do. And then when you do make a decision to leave, well, then you begin to get asked questions relating to where it is that you're going? And those are questions that you probably can't answer. I know for myself, I couldn't answer that. Hey, where are you going? What's this great truth that surely you must know for you to make a decision to leave? Like you're putting your entire family, your entire life at stake. Like you're risking everything because you know if you're not one of us, you're one of them. And I mean, you've heard all about them all along. We've been talking about them for years. You know that there's nothing good out there. So if you're leaving us, then surely you're going to something amazing. And so tell us, what's the new belief? What's the new thing that you're going to? That's the issue that I'd like to talk a little bit about today. It's just understanding the intensity of that feeling of not being able to answer. The fact that you feel so vulnerable, again, is a testament to the grip and strength of the community that you belong to. Now, first, let's start with the understanding that the reason that you probably are leaving is something that you legitimately were bothered by. You maybe had really strong feelings about something that you witnessed, something that you experienced, something that no one seems to be answering or giving a satisfactory answer for. In the case of my belief system, we followed the teachings of a man named William Branham, and it became very clear through some very intense examination of his own sermons and the pattern of his sermons and the historical claims that he made about his own life, that there were inconsistencies, that there were things that appeared to be untrue about what he said. And then when you aligned across a series of many years and many sermons, when he was talking about specific stories or specific incidents or claims that he made, and you look at the array and the sequence of stories, and you begin to see that the story changes. And sometimes the story doesn't just change a little bit, but it wildly changes. And if you're somebody, who kind of values truth-telling, and you're believing this person because they're kind of the epitome, the representation of the values that you're striving for as a Christian. Like this belief system that we're following, we had an understanding that the man who was delivering the message was more or less the manifestation of all of the gospel as it's been preached from the time of Christ and then Paul. Should this man not be extraordinarily honest and extraordinarily good and righteous and true? You have valid reason to have concern. That's how I felt about it. I felt I had really strong, valid concerns. So that was the thing that I had to replay in my mind at the time when I was going and it became known that I was about to leave. Because of course I was met with people standing in the way and basically asking that question. Where are you going? And what are you going to do with the truth that we have? Like if you're leaving, they don't preach the things that we preach here. So if you're going to a denominational church down the road, they're not going to teach what we know. I know within the week of me leaving the church, my own pastor was away. And so one of the deacons in the church, who was a man I loved dearly, a man who I talked to for endless hours. We loved each other as brothers and friends, and it was one of those people in my life I had great respect for. And he had a deep knowledge of the things that we believed. So he asked me to meet him for coffee, and we went for I think we went for breakfast, and we had coffee together, and we had some. I knew what was coming. We had some good conversation, but I knew what was coming, and he was going to do all of what I'm saying. He was doing what he was supposed to do. He was bringing to my remembrance that, hey, you've believed this all along. You've preached this all along. You have a lot of experience being in this group and understanding our ways, and you know what we preach, and you know it's unique. So because you know of all of these things, like I can't fathom where you're going to go. Where are you going to go? He used the phrase basically saying, I could tie you up in knots, like doctrinally. And he was absolutely right, because the only interpretation of Scripture that I had ever known was what was given to me by the leaders and the founder, William Branham. That's where I learned the Bible. I had no other dialogue. I had no other teaching. I had no other reference. So no, I wasn't going to be able to explain away any of the doctrines. I hadn't gotten to that point. Some of you who go through the journey of walking away from your group, maybe you've been sitting there for years, and you've been investigating quietly for years, and you've been kind of looking outside at the alternatives for years. And so maybe when somebody asks you, you're actually prepared to give some answers because you've already done that research. But for a lot of us, hey, we're too afraid to look outside at what other people teach and what they know, because it's been so demonized that, like, no, I haven't looked outside, because I've been told that that's like horribly wrong and evil. So no, I haven't spent time learning the way that they teach certain things. I just repeat what we've been taught, and I know how to say it the way that we say it, and I know how to use the Scriptures the way that we use the Scriptures. I can't give you an answer. I can't tell you another thing. So I wasn't equipped at all to say I'm throwing anything away. I didn't know where I was going to go. I just had to come back to the thing that I knew, and that was, I've been doing research about our founder, William Branham. And I have some really, really, really strong concerns. So currently I see two different issues. And what people are asking you to do, it's to ignore the issues of your founder. It's to ignore the issues and problems that you see. Don't look at those. You should be looking at what we believe. And if what we believe is true and honest, and the things that we believe come from the man who you seem to have a problem with now, like, shouldn't this overrule it, because this is the most important thing? So you should be able to forgive the issues that you see because we have the truth. It's not about the issues. It's not about the fact that he lied. It's not about, like, those things can go away because we have the truth. And that should be enough for you to stay. That's the kind of mental manipulation that you find in groups like this, that rob you of the ability to look honestly at the information in front of you. There's fallacies involved in the kind of scenario that I explained. They're appealing to the authority of the founder who you've been afraid to discredit or to speak against, or the man who is a prophet. And you know what happens when you speak against the prophets. If you were to speak against Moses, like, look what happened to the people who contested Moses. It didn't matter if Moses had flaws. Like, you don't contest the prophet. And that is a scarecrow that makes you not want to ask hard questions when you have them. So no, I couldn't tell you that I had a different opinion about the Godhead and the Trinity. No, I didn't have a different opinion about what happened in the Garden of Eden between the serpent and Eve. The doctrine of serpent seed, which our particular group believed, I had no other explanation because that's the way I currently saw it. But I have concerns about our founder. And if I have fundamental concerns about that, then even though I don't have a different answer than serpent seed, I'm willing to take a moment to examine it all. And so here's the other thing that you begin to see. Because currently you're on unequal ground. When you first leave, you have minimal opportunity to examine the message from a different viewpoint. You haven't had that time. So you're very vulnerable to the rhetoric and to the manipulations that come against you. That's because you're standing on unequal ground. They're on a foundation that they've set and established, and they've built their entire church around. And you've belonged to that same church, and now you're wanting to step off, and you don't even know where you're gonna land. So you're on unequal ground. They're standing exactly where they stand. They know the lines, the rhetoric, the strings, the buttons. They know how to push fear. They know how to do all those things because that's what happens. Anytime that somebody wants to leave, the buttons, they know the button to push. They know the scriptures to say. They know the quotes to read. They know the warnings and the red flags and all the things to scare you. Because it is a very fear-based kind of group. And that's the other part that you begin to recognize. It's like, you're controlling me with fear. You're trying to scare me. So no, you're not standing on equal ground, and you have to recognize that. And that is where I want to say that you need to give yourself permission. You have to give yourself permission for time and learning. So if you're pressured to answer in the moment, right now, you need to give an answer right now. And that's another thing that you would have been told throughout the years. Like, you should be able to give an answer and be ready to give an answer in the moment. When somebody asks you a question about your faith, you should be able to give an answer. And if you don't, then maybe you weren't learned enough. Maybe you weren't established enough. Hey, look, I can give an answer. Like I'm challenging you, and I can tell you exactly what I think. Why can't you? Oh, that's probably because you didn't learn well. Well, you probably need to come back and study the message more. You need to read the message more. That's your problem. You didn't learn enough. And so what you need to be able to do is to give yourself permission in those moments to say, no, I don't have an answer now. What I need is some time. And if you cannot give me the time, then I see a red flag. Because if the interest that we both share is to have very open and honest communication, and if we're both interested in having the kind of dialogue where threats and condescending and demeaning comments shouldn't be a part of our dialogue and our discussion, if that shouldn't be a part, and if you're saying, no, we're not threatening you, then you should be able to get the respect for some time. So you can go back and study a little bit, and it should be that you can say, I need about 2 weeks. No, I actually need about a month. No, I'll be back in about 3 months. So that I can study a little bit more, because I don't have answers right now. And if they can't give you that time to study and to look and to dig for more answers, then that's a red flag. And the reason why, if they don't allow you time and space to not have an answer right now, is because they want to maintain the advantage of unequal ground. You're in a vulnerable spot when you're having those early conversations. Your pastor drags you into the office. He's challenging you on what it is that you're doing and what it is you're thinking and where it is you're going. You don't have answers for any of it. You won't. You just aren't. And I'll tell you this very honestly, it took me years. Like, I probably, for the first year, I was just really numb. I was really numb. And I was reading a ton. And I was learning a ton. But I was also very intimidated to go back into those types of conversations. Because I still had fear buttons in me. I still knew I could be manipulated. In the unfair kind of way. In the way where they would be trying to trigger me into that fear response without answering questions that I had, using that to distract from the questions I had about the cloud, about various particular incidents, about a lot of things that I saw and witnessed. Like, when I ask about those things, look, I'm willing to give you the time to take to learn for yourself an answer. Like, if I'm asking for time, well, it should go both ways. Like, so no, you don't have an answer about the cloud? Well, good, please go do your reading about that, because I would like to know what you think. I think it would be really good if you went and you did some research about it so that you could come back and correct me if I'm wrong. But in order to correct me if I'm wrong, I want to talk about the issue. And that's the stuff, again, that is avoided. Like, we're not talking about my issues. Like, we're not answering my questions. Like, I need to answer their questions. Because it's unequal. It's the advantage of unequal ground. And that's a big red flag when you see somebody trying to take advantage of an unequal ground. The encouragement should be, you take time, I take time. We'll come back to the table and have a good conversation. That's the way it should be. And it's also okay to say, I don't know. Like, maybe you'll never get to the point where you ever really know what it is that you do or don't believe about the Godhead or the Trinity. That might seem like an extreme statement, but you know what? If you are so bothered, by what you have discovered in the ministry of your leadership and of William Branham and various things, I've heard some very troubling things even in recent weeks of things within leadership of pastors and ministers who I admired, and now I'm learning things that I really didn't want to know. And maybe you've heard some things that really are bothering you, and you've sought answers for them, and you wanted to know the explanation for those things. And if they're not given to you in a way that makes you feel confident in the leadership, it's okay to say, look, I don't know. I don't know what I think about God. I don't know what I think about serpent seed. But what I do know is that I don't want to be in a place where I do not trust the leaders above me, because I don't see them as being honest. And I do not see the character that is claimed to be possessed by the leaders. It's okay to do that. The pressure to have an absolute answer is a very strong characteristic of fundamentalist groups that are very interested in control. If somebody will not allow you the freedom to ask questions or have conversations about questions, if you do not have the freedom to take time to learn and to probe, and if somebody in particular is not allowing you to have that freedom, that's another demonstration of why it is that you're leaving. That's the way I saw it. And this is one of those topics that for me is very important to understand at the beginning. It's the giving yourself permission. It's to take that pressure off and to understand that, look, your mind is foggy and it's okay. And that's absolutely normal. And you don't have answers? That's okay. You need time. Somebody's not giving you time? See now I have a problem with that. That is a problem. Somebody doesn't want to let you take time to study. Somebody is demanding that you give an answer right now. They want the advantage of unequal ground. That's a problem. You're allowed to take time. Give yourself permission to take time to study, to learn, to ask. If that takes 2 years, if that takes 5 years, should you not be allowed to take it? I'd say yes. I think you do. I think you need to. And don't feel guilty for taking it. Don't feel like you have to show up with an answer tomorrow. Do not feel like you have to show up for an answer today. Because absolutely you're on unequal ground. So just accept that. You're on unequal ground. Get your footing under you. Take time. You're allowed. It's okay. Thanks for listening. My name is James. This is Morning Mercy. I'm going to be covering other subjects as well. This is one that was very important to me at the beginning because I have a very compliant personality. It's very hard for me to not be able to perform in the moment. I feel like I have to have an answer. And if I don't have an answer, then I'm very nervous. And I know a lot of people have gone through the same thing. So, yeah, take your time. Sorry. My name is James. This is Morning Mercy. We'll talk to you again.